with Nigeria getting set to resume international flight operations on August the 29th. The attention of the flying public has been focusing with a slight feeling of trepidation on the likely scenarios when takeoff is finally achieved. Will things remain the same or defined more by a different set of circumstances, or what is generally called the new normal? How can the resumption be managed to afford local airline operators the greatest chance of recovering from the devastating impact of the COVID-19 pandemic? These and other questions bordering on the technical and, of course, the logistical, we are about to put before our first guest, Alex Nwuba, first president of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association of Nigeria. Alex Nwuba, good morning, and thank you for joining us on the morning show.
Good morning.
Well, quickly, let's ask you. We've been told that August 29th will be the resumption date for international flights. But are we ready? Are we prepared? Is it a wise decision? And why August 29th? Why not later? You are first president of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. What is the position of your association with regard to this announcement?
Thank you. Good morning, and glad to be back on the show. August 29 was the date picked by the government. As you can see, many other countries in the region, in the ECOWAS region, are opening about the same period, August 29, between August 29 and September 1st. So our intention is to be in sync with the rest of the market. You can't have airports opening in one country and not opening in the others. There will be quite a bit of confusion. As to readiness, we've demonstrated when we opened up with the domestic flights that we are taking all precautions, we put all systems in place, and that has taken off smoothly. That shouldn't be any different with the resumption of international flights.
No, you haven't fully answered the questions. Now, I was asking you, what's the position of aircraft owners and pilots? And also, do you think that the necessary steps have been taken?
Right. I answered that by saying that, as we know, during the opening of the domestic operations, many precautions were put in place. These are no different from the precautions that will be put in place for international flights, other than the fact that we're dealing with a different set of passengers. The Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association is focused on the general aviation sector, but with regards to aviation in general, I think that there is general readiness. We've demonstrated that with the initial opening of the domestic flights. Here, the flights are longer. Additional precautions will have to be taken. Regular meals that were used to on long international flights are now packaged meals, as opposed to standard giveaway. Feeding is once. Sanitary towels are made available. So we are definitely ready. Nobody is taking any risks, both from the point of the airlines as well as the point of the airports.
Well, you did mention a factor that needs to be considered before we reopen. As you put it, it could lead to confusion. If we are opening up and there are countries that are still not reopened, there should be mutually, registered or, considered easing of mobility, because it doesn't make sense to open for people to fly to where remains closed. But what other factors do you think that should have been considered and should be considered? As we do know, the government says they are putting down procedures and protocols before August 29. So what other factors should we be considering as we are planning to open this international airspace? Well,
good morning. What has happened, as you know, is that prior to the operation of flights, you would have the airlines would have set up their booking systems. And so you would know which airlines are coming to Nigeria and which destinations you can go to. So you will not be able to book a flight that would not operate. But once you book the flight, it's clearly obvious that the airport at your destination is open and the airport from which you're departing is open. So the airlines have made arrangements with the airport authorities as well as the nations to which they are flying. So you can be generally assured that where you're going to will be open, and where you're coming from, you would arrive at an airport that is open. With regards to additional precautions, they are no different than they would have been for domestic flights. You as a consumer, I always say that this is a disease of self-responsibility. You as a traveler must take all the precautions in getting to the airport, observe the protocols, distancing, etc. at the airport, ensure that you don't touch things rather carelessly, wash your hands regularly, and generally be safe. We've had some experience with this over the last few months. The domestic airports have been open for a while. We haven't seen an increase in the infection rate. Rather, it's been decreasing, even though not many people are traveling. So generally, we have a situation where we've become quite adept at managing this disease, but one should not take for granted that the fact that domestic and international airports are open means the disease has gone away, the virus has gone away. It's still very much amongst us. We're just learning to manage it. If you look at it also from the standpoint of why we even had lockdowns in the first place, these were essentially to reduce the rate of infection so that the incidents in the hospitals are manageable. And so we'll continue to see that. Now you have international travelers coming from what will be obviously vetted countries. As you know, as applies to Nigeria, and this will be an issue, we still can't fly into Europe because they don't consider our infection decrease rates as acceptable to them to allow us to fly there. We will also make these decisions about which countries can fly to Nigeria, etc.
All right, so what countries can we fly to? I mean, that's quite interesting to me when I hear from you that we can still fly into Europe. And secondly, what will be the protocols on board long-haul flights? I mean, when we resumed domestic flights at first, we talked about social distance. All of a sudden, goodness me, most people are not seeing any form of social distancing in domestic flights any longer. Is it that everything is all good? You can still sit close to the other person? So those two questions, sir.
Okay. As we know, and from the beginning, social distancing applied to at the airport, not on board the airplane. It was obvious that people would not be able to sit apart from each other in the airplane. And so the airplane itself was able to handle the infection that takes place on board, and we all had to wear a mask. As to which countries you will fly to and which you can't fly to. Again, this is very early in the process. Nobody knows which we don't even know which airlines would come on the 29th yet. That's an ongoing process. And we don't even know which destinations we'll go to eventually. So these are all things that are yet to be sorted out.
Okay, can I ask you about this real quickly? I saw a list. I'll see if I can get the list out about the dates some airlines will be resuming. I think on the 29th, I saw Air Angola. And I saw a couple of other airlines still resuming in the first and second week of September. Can you confirm if there's any list like this? I saw the list.
I have certainly seen that list as well. And in the aviation community, we are asking where the source of the list is. When you see a list, it's important to have a reference to what the source is. So I would discount that list at the present time.
Okay.
Well, countries across Africa have been resuming international flights since August 1. Kenya started August 3. So we're likely to see more countries, Kazakhstan, Russia, other countries having flights out there, international flights. But if you were to make a suggestion, what should be the destination for international flights from Nigeria, considering the fact that some countries have restricted the list? Russia restricted its own list to just 3 countries, Kazakhstan to just 6 countries. So what do you think should be the preferred destinations for Nigeria? And then who is going to benefit from all of this? I know that aircraft owners and pilots will want to return to work. But, you know, what we've been told is that even in the countries where flights have resumed, pre-COVID, they're just able to make up to less than 50% of the passenger rate that they had pre-COVID. So who is going to benefit from this? And where do Nigerian airlines come in? Are we reopening international flights so that Ethiopian Airlines, British Airways can continue to make money at the expense of local airlines? Do we even have the local capacity?
Well, let's start with, throughout the period that the airports were closed, we were aware that international airlines were flying into Nigeria at what were essentially outrageous fares. 400,000 naira one way from London, 500,000 from the US. And so we continue to see these evacuation flights going on. By opening, we take away the need for aviation flights, and we can therefore normalize fares. The initial beneficiaries will be international airlines. If you look at what countries can we go to, I would rather start by saying what countries do we go to originally. Asia is the #1 destination for Nigerian travelers. But it's not the reverse. Nigeria is not the destination for Asian travelers. Europe, that was our traditional travel partner, comes third in terms of destinations. So we'll see, basically, even during the lockdown period, there were flights to the US, and the US is open to that. But we also have to be aware that anybody arriving in Nigeria will still be subject to 14 days of isolation. Upon arrival, your passport will be taken. You'll be required to report in 8 days. So, for example, if you arrive in Lagos and you're going to Enugu, it will be advisable to remain in Lagos and pay hotel accommodation. And so doing that, that's an extra cost. So the fact that flights will be open on day one doesn't mean that everyone will travel. First of all, as we saw with the domestic flights, the numbers were still low, 20, 30% on some flights. It will be the case. There'll be an initial rush because some people have been away from home for months and staying in hotels and running high bills. Those people want to return. They are the ones that have been paying these very high evacuation and repatriation flight fares. They will now return at what may be a somewhat reasonable fare. But the fares should be higher because these will be essentially one way. Nobody is going to Europe, so people coming from the planes coming from Europe will carry passengers coming in, but very few going back. So they'd have to compensate by increasing fares. So preferable destinations we can't say at this point because you can't go to Europe, you can't go to Asia. Ghana will benefit tremendously because Nigeria's #1 destination is Ghana. Ghana is opening up at the same time as we're opening up. So Africa World Airways, Aero, ARIC, and so on will benefit from that movement. But the overall beneficiary is the economy. As we know, during lockdown, business came to a standstill. We do quite a lot of Zoom meetings and other types of meetings, but trade is not as usual. So as Africans, we still can't go to Europe, we can't go to Asia. But within the African continent, for the markets that open, it will create a new economic opportunity. And things have been pretty tight. There have been job losses. It's had an economic impact. The dollar has been going sky high. So the beneficiary is the economy. All of this is being done for the economy. We know the disease is very much around us, so the natural inclination is not even to open in the first place. But we see that the economy is suffering, so we need to fix the economy by opening up the ease of movement. It's unfortunate also that we still talk about the African Continental Free Trade Area where we're only doing 5% trade amongst us. If we increase that percent of the trade, increase the movement of persons within the African continent, we will be the ultimate beneficiaries. On the other hand, we also have the tourism industry looking inwards and saying, Nigerians, since we can't go anywhere, you can't go to Dubai, you can't go to London, you can't go to Paris, we need to explore the tourist potentials in this sector. And that is why a bank like Sterling Bank is putting $5 billion into the tourism sector. So ultimately, while we talk about opening of domestic and international flights, it's about time we start to look inward. There's tourism in Nigeria, there's potential for business in Africa. So everything we're looking for is on the continent, and that's the purpose of this opening.
Yeah, some relief for passengers and businesses, but it will seem as if we're responding to the economic consequences of this pandemic and not the health consequences. And one reality with this pandemic is that a decision made at a particular point in time may seem justified, and a few days or weeks, it may seem wrong, and a bad decision. We've seen that at the moment, the Minister for Aviation, Hadi Sirika, seems to be on a different page from the Presidential Task Force on the August 29 date. Do you think, and do you foresee a situation where, perhaps the country begins to rethink this decision? And would it be the right one?
Yeah, and I think that the reality of this is that this is all trial and error. We have no experience with the COVID-19 in a real sense. The impact on our country hasn't been as bad as it has been in Asia, in Brazil, in the US, etc. For example, Texas, that reopened and is considering closing back again. So the reality is that after we open, we'll see the results. I'll tell you, for one, even though we open for domestic flights, I haven't been on a domestic flight myself, we have to take precautions as individuals. So we'll reopen, we'll see what the impact is in a few weeks. Of course, the disease, the pattern is you open, see what happens, you try to mitigate it. So we'll see what happens in a few weeks. The fact that we reopen doesn't mean we will not have to close again in a few weeks. It's all a matter of seeing the outcome. We have no experience with this disease. We didn't do this with Ebola. We're trying to, like you said, there are two angles. There's the health angle and the economic angle. And there's a theory generally that says we can't, for the sake of health, close down the economy. Because if we improve our health and we can't find a job or we can't live, what's the benefit of living? These are trade-offs. And so we're trying to micromanage this situation and see what the outcome is. So potentially in a few weeks, we'll review. I'm sure that the government will review its decision and decide to continue the opening, as well as opening up more countries. Europe will consider the possibility of opening up to us. And then a decision will be made in a few weeks' time whether we should close again or continue with the expansion of the opening.
Right, so I've got two questions. You said something that was music to my ears. I loved it. You said people that are coming in, they're going to be quarantined for 14 days, and you're going to take their passport. I want to know the modality of that. You take their passports. They don't have the access to their passports. They have to stay in a hotel. They can't go about their bits and business. Take, for instance, if I'm coming in, I'm a foreigner, and I have work to do in Enugu. Maybe I'm like an engineer and I need to fix something in Enugu, so I have to wait in Lagos for 14 days. Also, I want to ask around, you know, there's been talk about airlines saying that we have to provide a COVID-19 test if you want to get out of Nigeria. Is that going to be add on to the aviation costs? What's the modality for that? And apart from this, people coming into Nigeria, are they going to present like a COVID-19 test, and on top of it, we're still going to take their passports?
Yes. It's music to your ears and it's music to everybody's ears, but I think there are serious complications that we're going to see how they will be managed. The idea generally is that prior to arrival, within 2 weeks of arriving in Nigeria, you've taken a COVID-19 test to clear you. It's like the famous HIV test. People say he took an HIV test, but it takes 6 months for the disease to show up. In this case, it probably takes a week to 2 weeks for the disease to show up. So generally, it's expected that you took a test 2 weeks before arrival, which means you could have been infected 2 days prior to your arrival. So upon arrival in Nigeria, you're expected to take a further test 8 days after you arrive. That means that, for example, if you arrived in Lagos and you're going to Kano, you would arrive in Lagos, you'd go to Kano, do your business, but return with the expectation that you take a further test. It's a challenge because as a business person, I give my users myself an example. On an average week, I make 4 trips abroad back and forth. And that's impossible if I'm going to go somewhere and stay for 14 days. And that would be a challenge for a business. There are very few serious business people that are coming to Nigeria to spend 14 days. So clearly, these people will not come. They will continue to do business the way that they're doing it now via Zoom and other methods. So when you arrive, we've said you will take a test before arrival. You take a test when you arrive. You asked the second question.
Yeah, that's the second question. So leaving the country, for instance, some airlines are saying you have to show a COVID-19 certificate, you know, that you have taken the test 3 days prior. So who is going to bear that cost? Is it going to be an add-on cost to you, or the airlines will make an arrangement for that? And also, I say that because of the logistics of getting results. I mean, sometimes you do a COVID-19 test, it takes about a week or 2 to get results. It's quite a very cumbersome logistical process.
Right. And that's why, in the Nigerian case, they ask you to take the test at least 2 weeks in advance so that you're sure you got that response. The test is your responsibility in most cases, even though an airline like Emirates says we'll pay for the cost of your test. But naturally, they'll build that in. Nobody is giving away Christmas gifts in this process. But it's expected that you will go to a certified, not just any testing center, you will go to a certified testing center where you'll be tested prior to arrival. And more often, sometimes you'll be tested at the airport with a rapid test, either at departure or arrival. And then you're expected upon arrival at your destination to be tested again. You would have to pay all these costs. These are the additional costs for doing business in the post-COVID period.
Well, I mean, the Minister of Aviation made it very clear that at the point of departure, travelers will have to pay for the cost of the test 8 days before departure. So that's quite clear. But let me ask you, the Nigerian government is also saying that by August 22, there will be no more evacuation of Nigerians who are stranded in different parts of the world. Is that an indication that, you know, if you are outside Nigeria, then you are now on your own? And does it mean that Nigeria plans to just open up the international airports to every airport, to every airline? Because there may well be Nigerians who are stranded in parts of the world that Nigeria, that may be high-risk countries. And then you say, you know, at this moment, we don't know all the details, but Nigerians would like to know exactly, you know, what the Nigerian government wants to do. Today is what? August 19? August... Yes. What about, you know, it's just a few days.
Yeah, 19.
And then, you know, difference of about a few days and 10 days, we don't have enough clarity. When are we going to have that clarity with regard to the details? And was there any consultation between the Ministry of Aviation and other stakeholders? Because the Presidential Task Force seems to be saying one thing, The Ministry of Aviation is saying another thing. Your own association, were you even consulted?
Well, I first must apologize. I didn't hear all of your questions. I had a bit of an audio problem. But the fact remains that the government consults widely on the decision-making process. We don't know what the conflicts may be between the PTF and the Ministry of Aviation. But, you know, the PTF is looking at the broader picture. The ministry is under pressure from the industry to take some actions. And it is responsible for taking actions as relates to aviation. There's been wide consultation, obviously. Now, you have the question of if I am in Asia and I'm stuck, there are no more evacuation flights, how do I do that? The fact remains that there's a network for travel. So, for example, if you're in Canada and you can't find a flight to Nigeria, obviously there must be flights between Canada and the US, and there will be flights between the US and Canada. So you'd have to pay the extra cost of routing your way through all of these markets. The decisions of who will come, where we go to, are all mutually discussed issues between countries. We can't be sure who will come and who will go. I'm sure there will be some reciprocity. Obviously, we will not have a situation where Nigerians can't go to Europe and Europeans then can come to Nigeria. That's not how diplomacy works. So obviously, there will be discussions on a governmental level as to which markets open, which markets close, what the opportunities are. Europe may have to review its policies toward Nigeria, and certainly will review its policies towards Nigeria when they've made a determination that it is safe to do so, to open up their markets. When we talk about opening up, we're really saying the people we're allowing to come to our country, have they managed the disease in theirs? Just as they are doing when they say the people allowed to come to our country, has Nigeria managed the disease within theirs? You have seen the cavalier attitude we've had to this disease. I'm sure you've been to our markets. It's quite frightening how people walk around without masks and think that the disease is gone, it's over, it didn't kill as many people. Oh, Bill Gates' wife was wrong on the numbers. 1.5 million didn't die. Millions are not dying. We're not finding bodies by the side of the streets. That's the attitude we've taken to this disease, and obviously that's very dangerous. So these decisions will be made on a intergovernmental basis bilaterally as to who can come and who will go. And so that will be the outcome of how we'll grow. And individuals would have to find their way within the difficulties of these existing arrangements as to how they can come and leave Nigeria.
Well, let's quickly talk about the rescue package for the aviation sector, the proposed bailout for the aviation sector. What more do we know about that proposed bailout at this time? Are you aware? And what objective really will it serve at the moment?
Well, we've been talking about the bailouts and nobody really knows. It's just like that list circulating as to which airlines will come and will go. We don't know what the sources are. But obviously, the discussion is around remuneration to employees of airlines so that's to keep them on the job. Airlines have suffered. They haven't carried passengers for months. They've had no revenue for months. They've had ongoing cost. Aviation is not a business where you say you shut down and things shut down. You have to keep the airplane serviced and maintained. So these costs have been going on. So the conversation now seems to be centered around the wages that were to be earned by these individuals so they don't get laid off. But we don't know any specifics yet as to what these will be. And we're looking forward again to looking. The airlines need help. They need assistance. In Europe, billions of dollars have been poured to sustaining the airlines. Virgin has gone through very difficult times, and they've come up with a few ingenious financing mechanisms. The Nigerian aviation industry needs help, and it needs help as soon as possible to sustain it and make it remain competitive against other carriers. This is not an industry that is domestic. It's global in nature. And so if we don't support our domestic airlines and Arab countries are supporting theirs, Europeans are supporting theirs, we would lose the market. And it simply means more pressure on the foreign exchange market in our country and for our economy.
Right, I want to ask about the recent pilot crisis. Talking of some pilots, the associations and the union coming up to say no, back and forth, the process of, trying to fix things between these pilots. What happened? What was the whole gamut of all of that?
Well, there are multiple issues. The unions have certain expectations of the airlines. The airlines are saying, we've had a very difficult year, and so we need some compromises made. There's discussion about compromise, but neither party is happy. So in that situation, there's been pressure. Pilots earn between, in Naira, let me convert it, at current exchange rate, over 4 point something. A captain earns over 4 million Naira each and every month. And that's from a company not making any money. And so the companies are having difficulty paying these salaries. The first thing they have done is said, let's do a 40% reduction for pilots. Let's do 10% for people that are not earning as much. And that's been pressure. But pilots are negotiating, parties are negotiating. The unions are involved in the negotiation process. And you understand that these things are never easy. And so to cut costs, some airlines have chosen to lay off a number of pilots temporarily until business picks up again, and that is not acceptable to the unions. So all of these are the many challenges that will be ameliorated if some aid package is made available for the government, for the industry. But these are the challenges we're facing in very, very difficult times for the aviation industry.
So where are we now as regards that crisis? Because I know at some point there was some intervention. Have they been called back? Have those pilots laid off been called back across the 2 or 3 airlines?
It's an ongoing process. Like everything else, it's an ongoing process. Nothing is absolute at this point. The parties are now talking to each other. Pilots have the option to come back if they wish, and the companies are willing to take them back. But discussions are going on about wages and the reality of the market that we're in right now.
Well, thank you very much, Alex and Nwuba, for joining us this morning on The Morning Show. I think we've had, very interesting engagement with you this morning. Thank you.